Ed Ayers. I'm a professor of strategy here at INSEAD, and I have the honor to interview Paolo Bertoluzzo, who is the CEO of Vodafone Italy, and I'm going to ask him about the key challenges he has as a leader. You are in an industry where many things are changing at the same time. There are technology changes, there are regulatory changes, and the whole mobile ecosystem is changing. You just look at what players like Apple and Google. What are, for you in the coming years, the key things which are on top of your mind, you think you have to cater to and pay attention to?
In our industry, we are kind of facing a perfect storm, because I think for years everybody has been talking about convergence. Yeah. And convergence is in fact happening after a long time of talks. And I think the convergence we are seeing at the moment is maybe a little bit different from what we did expect. Today we have digital, which is becoming a reality. Everything is becoming digital, I think, but people, almost everything is becoming digital. You have IP, which is really changing without us knowing it, but it's really changing the way communications work. And the combination of these two things are really relevant, because IP means you can really transport anything everywhere as bits and bytes once it's digitalized. And the third thing is happening is actually always-on societies, which is enabled by broadband for sure, wireless and wireline. But a combination of these three elements, digitalization, IP, and always-on societies, is really making everything possible. And to me, that's really what convergence is all about. And I call it a perfect storm, because if you go back a few years ago, you could think about new services, you could think about new ideas, but then executing them was a kind of difficult. Today, I mean, technology is not the limit any longer, because through the combination of this element, you can really do whatever you want. And the real challenge is to have the best idea and the best execution, and then the right strategy. But everything is possible. And to me, this is the #1 challenge for our industry.
Yeah. And you see lots of, at the moment, shifts in value chain, and parties trying to position themselves. And how do you see yourself being a mobile operator, and on the left and the right side of you, things happening? What are the key challenges for you there?
Well, first of all, if I may, Vodafone is becoming more and more a convergent operator, in the sense that in every market we are clearly mobile, core mobile. More and more we become mobile broadband as well. And in several countries we're also entering the fixed market, and in particular with fixed broadband, delivering convergent services for families and companies. In the case of Italy, the place which I lead, for example, we have a 10% market share in fixed broadband as well, which we did build over the last 2 or 3 years. And therefore, more and more we become that type of company. I think what is happening at the moment is a kind of reshaping the different roles within the value chain. To me, it's more and more clear that the core of the value of mobile operators and telco operators more in general is in access, in customer management, in retail, in customer operations, in complexity management, if I may, which is a broader concept. Clearly, I think the relationship with the media industry is becoming clearer and clearer, in a sense that for some time telco companies were kind of dreaming of becoming media companies as well. We had some mergers back in the US and also in Europe, which were kind of having probably a too faraway ambition. I think now it's very clear that the right ambition for a telecommunication company is to be the best partners for media companies, which are now looking at telecommunications as a new distribution platform. And clearly the media companies which are becoming successful today are the ones that are embracing this digital channel concept. And then you have the players which are coming from the IP world, which I think are adding a lot of value to the industry. I think the examples we see today coming from the Apples, the Googles of this world, the Microsofts are very clear. And I think it's an interesting phase, because everybody is kind of in a partnering mode, but at the same time everybody is kind of looking on each other to understand where we're going from here. Because at the end of the day, the competition that we start seeing today is actually in terms of who owns the mind of the customer, which is at the end of the day a relevant point.
Given that you're on a perfect storm, everything you learned at INSEAD or other schools about how to do strategy is probably not valid anymore. So how do you develop your strategy? How are you doing that in circumstances like this?
I think developing strategy is always a combination of art and science. No, I think at the end of the day, the methodology doesn't really change in the sense that understanding the environment, analyzing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and trying to work from there what your competitive strategy is and on which assets you really want to average remains at the end of the day the core of it. I think as we're going along, the complexity requires a lot of, let's say, arts in terms of understanding complexity and managing complexity, which is something that is a little bit more structured by definition. I think that you have this dimension of convergence, which is happening. At the same time, you have another one, which is the complexity of globalizations of themes, which is also happening at the same time. And the combination of these two elements are quite fascinating.
And so are you kind of postponing big bets because you don't know what's going to happen, or are you... So how brave can you be in this environment?
No, I think there is. I think for managers and leaders, not being brave is a problem in any case. So whatever the phase is, I think you have to place your bets. What is in my mind, in our mind as Vodafone in general, incredibly clear is that whatever will happen in terms of convergence and in dynamics with the players along the value chain, it is very, very clear that being the one with the best networks, the one with the best customer care, with the best shop service, with the best online service for our customers, with the best CRM systems is going to be key, whatever happens. And then we can partner, we can have alternative services in some areas, we can deploy our own services, we can be distribution platforms, but at the end of the day, the customers will always look at telecommunication operators to have basic services, and that's the starting point for a good relationship.
So basically you're saying a good strategy at the moment in this instance is really focused on having skills, the core skills. And once you have those, you can react very flexible to what's happening.
I think somehow what is happening at the moment is bringing operators back to basics somehow, because it's very, very clear that as you are in a new phase of investments with broadband, being the ones which invest in the best way, in the most clear way, is going to be important. At the end of the day, our companies invest. I think Vodafone invests worldwide 7-8 billion euros. We invest in Italy 1 billion euro a year, which is actually makes our company one of the biggest investors in the country. And clearly, the way you invest in this money is going to be defining who the winners and the losers are.
If you think about skills, are you going to need new skills in the future? That you say, I really know, given what we're supposed to do, what we should do to survive in this landscape, are you going to build new skills in addition to what you do already?
Absolutely. I think there is a combination of new skills, but also new mentalities, which I think is not necessarily the same thing. If you take our case in Italy, which is a market where we execute, I think, quite fully the entire strategy, we had a phase for the last 3 years where we did acquire a lot of competencies in convergence and fixed line. Yeah. And we did hire something like 300, 400 people, which were really able to deploy the network, develop services, manage customers, do technical assistance, do sales, more complex sales, and these kind of things. Regulatory stuff as well, and which is quite different from mobile. So that has been the phase for the last 3 years. Yeah. Over the last 12 months, we've been investing immensely in web competencies, Web 2.0, but in general internet competencies. Yeah. If you take our case, we did hire over the last year something like 100 people, which we put in one single floor in the main building of the company, very close to myself, which is basically managing our online presence of all across the board, and this is becoming really important. And so there is this competence, kind of continuous evolution, which has been convergence. Web, IT is becoming core again for our business. It's never been irrelevant, but I think what is happening is making IT more relevant than before. And so competence is important. I think the challenge for companies like Vodafone, which were created 15 years ago, 20 years ago, so they used to be young and fresh. I think now that we are facing, partnering, discussing with companies such as the Googles and the Apples and the Microsofts, it's really important to make sure that we are fresh again, because let's face it, I think for people which are in their late 40s, early 50s, it's not always easy to understand what is happening in the web space, in the Web 2.0 space. And therefore, for example, in our case, despite all the efficiency challenges you have, you want to make sure that you hire every year, in our case, 50 to 100 very young professionals, very talented professionals. Any competence is fine, but really people coming with the mindset of the people which have been growing in living the new generation. We are getting into the space of the digital natives. We are almost there. They're starting to get out of universities, and this is dramatically relevant for us.
So, and that's what you mean by changing the motivation. And so, in kind of building these skills, you talk a lot about hiring new people who bring a new impulse, but you have to bring the whole organization along. And so, how do you this very classical problem of, you're almost a bit of an incumbent in spite of being only 15 years old. How do you address this challenge of, turning around this company and get the incumbent part of the company to look for this new era? What do you do?
At Vodafone, in most of the operations of Vodafone around the world, in fact, we were created as challengers. And therefore, we don't have the habit of being dominant. So I think over time we have probably the challenge of being big, and therefore being fast and flexible is really our challenge. But I think in terms of mentality, we don't have the mentality of the dominance or of the incumbents. No? So from this point of view, I don't see it as a major challenge. The real thing is actually to move your people from being telecommunications on the old mindset, which is voice and messaging, go out and sell and build a network, into a different space, which is manage customers, manage customer base, deploy new services on top of your network, partner with new players. That's actually the challenge for a company like ours. And from this point of view, I think there are basically two ways of doing it. One is leadership, sometimes tough leadership, in a sense that you have to be the one that sets the change. No?
What do you mean
by
yourself?
Well, I mean, being brave in setting a new direction, even when you're successful in your old direction, and saying, look, guys, you know what? We have to, for example, move towards fixed line as well and convergence as well. In the case of Vodafone, it has been a big change because Vodafone has been a mobile operator for a long time, saying that the world was going mobile. And now we are also saying the world is going mobile, but there is convergence, and therefore it's a good opportunity and sometimes a necessity for us as well. And so reshaping the strategy and driving your people with you requires a personal commitment and a personal exposure, which is important. So putting your face in front of your people, saying, future is going to be different, we have to go there, there is no way back, I think requires a good leadership effort. And at the same time, you have to really take the risk of really injecting in the company a few new leaders or also middle managers and professionals with the new skills and protect them. Because clearly, when you inject new people with new skills coming with a different background, there is always the risk of being cannibalized or absorbed within the larger organization, not because we're incumbents, but just because we are big and normally quite successful. And that's actually another effort of defending them, protecting them, doing something which is organizational visible, reshaping your organization to make the point very clearly that something has changed, presenting new leaders to the larger team, and so that's the other piece. So a combination of personal leadership from the top team and injection of new people protecting them and elevating them to make them visible.
And also things like, training or communication or those kind of things, how important are those?
Well, absolutely. I think training is by definition important, is always important in these phases. I think the leadership and communication, obviously, element is actually the most relevant one, because I think when you have good people, and I believe we have training them, retraining them is always something that can be done. And I think almost everybody can do. What is difficult is actually to take your good people with the good people that were really good 5 years ago at doing something and convince them that actually the world is changing and we need to anticipate the change and then we have to go. And therefore they need training, or they need, for example, to start working differently with their colleagues. They need to create a room for their new colleagues, which are newcomers from from a different room. And therefore, again, to me, the leadership and communication element is actually even more important than the more classical training element, which is amazingly important.
Yeah.
A company,
but it's more like a hygiene thing.
Well, a company like ours over the last few years, we did provide to our employees and to our external parties something like 1 million euros of training per year, which is an enormous amount of training. Yeah. We're actually one of the biggest training schools of our countries. Yeah. But again, to me, it's really important. But that's something that can be replicated. I think driving your successful team to change direction and embrace it and engage with it and create space for new players is actually the most important one.
And for you personally, what are the things which really make you passionate and make you get up in the morning?
At the end of the day, for someone playing in our industry, at the end of our industry where players are really exposed to the external world, in the sense that for good reasons, most of the time, sometimes also for less good reasons, we are really exposed in the media, with institutions, with politicians and so on. And actually, we are very exposed with the society, with people. Everybody I meet, everywhere I am, at least one person out of 3, 1 person out of 2 is a customer of my company. No? and therefore, you are always exposed personally somehow, and all of the people that work in our companies are exposed. And this is quite unique in terms of for our industry. And at the end of the day, I think what gets people excited, yes, is the challenge of becoming #1, is the challenge of being innovative, is the challenge of being profitable. All these good things are relevant, but I think at the end of the day, being admired is what human beings like. Yeah. Not necessarily personally, but for what you do, for the company you work for what you represent. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think that's what actually motivates people to take risk in innovation, make the best effort on customer management, cut costs because that's also necessary, reshape organizations, and actually put the personal extra commitment.
Yeah, so it's really about being very proud of what you built in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have lots of students who will be hopefully watching this Leadercast. They're all at the beginning of their career and making difficult decisions of what they should do and how they should do. Is there anything, if you were in their shoes, thinking back, what would you advise them if they think about shaping their career? What should they be looking for?
Well, #1, don't be too stressed on your next job.
Yeah.
I think all of us have been through this out of university and out of business school. Kind of, your one-time life decision, which will shape your future. At the end of the day, it's not really true in the sense that the most important thing is that whatever you do, you really get out of every working day, not only happy with what you have done, but also happy with the fact that you have learned something. To me, making sure that every day I added something to my skills, to my abilities, to my competence. To me, that's really priority #1, which is still true today. I think I will change job or leave the industry, whatever, when I will stop having fun and learning, which is, I think, the most important thing. The second element, I believe, is that people matters, in the sense that when you get out of school, business school, you feel that you know it all, but at the end of the day, the more you go along with your career, you realize that the soft side of it is actually the one which makes the difference in between being a good professional and a good leader. And the soft side of it is something that you can feel and touch at school, but then it's something that you have to build on yourself. If you like, that's the emotional intelligence side of you, which really makes a difference as you go forward. And then I think any career, any industry can be a good career if you enjoy it, if you learn everything every day, because if you have the combination of these two things, you will move up and change and learn more. And obviously, the people side of it is going to be really important, in particular if you want to work in companies, in large companies, where by yourself at some point you can communicate, you can lead, but then you can do nothing if you don't have your people.
Yeah. So basically you're telling the real school is only starting now.
Well, I think that's a very good way of putting it, but I think really enjoy it, because I think business school is great. I'm happy to be back for the day at INSEAD, but I think the real school is waiting for you.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.